Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I am your host, Paul O'Neid, and today I'm joined by a friend of mine who I've known for quite a while, and I've honestly seen him absolutely take off in terms of his, I don't want to say influence in the industry, but truthfully, the evolution of a career in fitness writing and coaching. Andrew Coates. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Well, I appreciate it, man. We obviously were hanging out at
Yeah.
Cooking Con. It's funny you say the whole fitness influencer thing, and people, that term gets thrown around almost this derogatory light. And just funny, I'm speaking at the Canfor Pros Global Conference this August in Toronto, and so they have on their website is a banner of like some of the, I guess the headliner speakers, and the marketing people put me down my title as a fitness influencer, and I see this, I'm like, oh, ouch. So anyway,
Hurt.
I emailed them, and I'm like, hey, can we change this like to fitness writer, coach, whatever? Like, oh my God, yes, we're sorry about that. And but the flip side of this is, yes, the word gets thrown around a little bit derogatorily or whatever, but I mean, what is the goal of all of this stuff is to positively influence other people in their lives. We just know that the term has sort of been a little bit co-opted and distorted and gets almost used as a slur if we're trying to discredit. I prefer the terms grifters and charlatans for the bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And it's one of those words like mentor for me. I'm like, I know that I mentor other coaches, but the word mentor, it's associated with the get your first 10K month and whatever. It's like, yeah, but you're not a mentor. You're not helping these people become better versions of themselves. You're not like doing the deep work involved in true mentorship. And as far as like fitness influencer goes, you have no, this is one thing we spoke about this at Coaching Con, and I think it's a great jump off point for our conversation today. I truly believe that someone who has a mastery of their craft has no hill to die on. They're always trying to learn, they're always trying to level up. I'm wondering, as your career has progressed, as you've been, as you've earned these opportunities to write for bigger publications, you seem to always be leveling up in terms of either the type of content, the breadth of content, the depth of your content. What's been that main motivator, and how have you kind of avoided having to plant your flag somewhere?
All right, let me try to tease out some stuff here. One, I mean, I think the idea of always being of a student mindset and of being of service as well, those two things are kind of different, but being of service to people, your clients, other people in the industry, having a very abundant mindset about the other people in the industry, because I think we all grow together and we can support each other and great things come of it. We don't need to be scarce or transactional. I think that as you gain more experience working with clients, certainly is going to be the big one. But as you have more interactions in the industry, you're simply exposed to better ideas, new ideas, you're learning more. And you kind of have two choices. A, you just stay stuck in I'm just a coach, and therefore that's the only outlet for everything. Or B, you can kind of go, all right, I can take lessons and wisdoms out of this. And I can, if I don't have the skills on various different forms of media, which I'm sure we're going to talk lots about, we can learn those skills. So we've got writing, we got video, obviously podcast, audio-based stuff. There's skill element to it. And the simple act of showing up and posting fairly basic stuff on your social media, which is in theory going to at least start with the audience of the people in your world, in your network, the people you worked in old careers with, you went to the school with, your clientele, your family, your friends, your acquaintances, etc. And I've always been very bullish on being connected to those people primarily through Facebook, because I've been in this 13 and a half years. So it's before Instagram,
Mhm.
certainly TikTok or some of these other platforms. And I would just post up what my clients were doing, pieces of wisdom, things I'm learning along the way, not worried about what other people think.
Mhm.
That's a really big trap that you can worry, like, oh, the approval of like, the more experienced coaches. Most of those people, at least the good ones, are not going to come in and police what you're saying. Yes, we see a lot of that on social media where, the industry likes to fight with each other, but they're generally not punching down very often. And if you're someone who's just trying to put yourself out there, just don't worry about what they say. And honestly, if you happen to say something and run afoul of one of the more aggressive or malicious types that uses evidence-based, training
My
philosophy in order to
favorite
be
term.
to be a shield, an outlet for just kind of being a bully and just being an aggressive, hostile person. Now, there are people who aggressively go after other people in the industry, and as long as the people are going after, I think, are verifiable charlatans, I've got no issue. Like Lane Norton, he's always going after your Gary Breckas and like David Asprey, who like injects his own piss and just dumb fuckery like this. Like, game on, Lane, go take him on. Like, I don't have the bandwidth or the mental energy to like do Lane,
Yeah.
but I've hung out with Lane, and literally at an event we were both speaking at, and there's a girl there in front of us that I know, and she says to Lane, years ago he had actually like kind of called her out on something she had said, and she was less experienced. And so Lane just paused, and he looked embarrassed, and he's like, you know what? I've learned from stuff like that, and I've learned to punch up and not punch down. And she was happy to meet Lane, and she wasn't upset, but she like took the opportunity to kind of let him know. And most people are like that. So you have nothing to be afraid of. Be of service to your audience, because you're thinking, oh, my audience is following Lane Norton or all these other big figures. Like, no, you're their go-to fitness authority, as long as you actually like, embrace that role, and will show up for them. And along the way, if you show up, you're learning by coaching, you're learning by dipping your toes into various forms of media content creation and sharing, you'll get better at it. As long as you're paying attention, you're open-minded, you will get better at it. Which, in the case of, you alluded to the writing, which I know I actually want to direct people to on your YouTube. We have a 10-minute video that
It's
you
actually
were
15
15,
minutes. Your
15.
boy
And
can talk.
I just riffed, just rolled, right? But there
Yeah.
was so much there. And it's on a lot of the things about how to get writing started, how to get published, all these sort of things. So if you guys are specifically interested in the writing stuff, that's a really nice resource that you were able to tease out of it. So I can't stress enough, people go over there, but I'll let you kind of direct me and cue me up here.
Yeah, well, that's all I'm going to do, man. I'm just going to key you up and I'm going to let you go because I think there's a wealth of knowledge there as someone who has truly like forged their own path. And I remember when we first met, you were just personal training, coaching, kind of dipping your toe in the water of content development, podcasting, that sort of thing. And through that, it's evolved into you've written for almost every single major publication, probably save a couple. Like, and I'm sure there's some on your list where you're like, oh, I got to get that one. Um,
Totally.
and
Yeah.
you just started by doing, right? So what spurned this? Like most people these days, they don't look at written word and go, I want to be a writer. They go, I want to make really viral reels.
So I actually have what I think is a cool take on this. So if you've been around the industry for a while, and before social media was a big thing, all of the fitness authorities that we knew of, with rare exceptions, had to come through some sort of centralized gatekeeper. So the ultimate gatekeepers were mostly the fitness publications. Some of them were completely online, T Nation being one of the main ones, bodybuilding.com, or Muscle Fitness Men's Health, some of the other things like that, right? And you had the rare individuals, I'll say Renaissance periodization, Dr. Mike Israel, Nick Shaw, where they built something and grew it to the point where they didn't necessarily get platformed on another major pub thing. Like even Dr. John Berardi, who built Precision Nutrition, some of his early traction was T Nation.
For
Eric
sure.
Cressy, Tony Gentilcore, two of the three original founders of Cressy Sports Performance, very prolific writers, and gained a lot of popularity and credibility through writing for T Nation. Lane Norton came up through the bodybuilding.com forums, and I started writing for them, got featured in video series for them, and then leaned into YouTube. There are individuals who were able to build brand and authority. Jeff Nippert, Omar Isuf, a couple Canadian evidence-based
Yeah.
professionals who really got into YouTube and were able to grow on YouTube fairly big. And YouTube is both, it's sort of a gatekeeper, but it's really a social media platform too. Um, so anyway, those gatekeepers like T Nation, you get into T Nation 15, 20, 25 years ago, that's a kingmaker, right?
Oh
Those
yeah.
are the authorities of the industry. And so what's now happened is those gatekeepers still exist. There aren't as many of them. But you now have the ubiquity of being able, if you're skilled at short form media creation, video being kind of a big one right now through TikTok, Reels, etc. If you get good at that, you can actually grow very aggressively on social media. And we can complain and whine about fitness influencers with large followings, but that's not going to make them go away, especially if they're not very credible. So
Mhm.
my argument to people who are complaining about this is learn the skills and just do a better job, do it with better information and more integrity, and take up space from the Liver King and some of the other grifting muppets that people are walking through grocery store aisles
Muppets.
saying, this is shit, don't eat this shit, and like holding boxes of like Fruity Pebbles cereal or whatever, like Lucky Charms. Like, listen, leave my fucking Lucky Charms alone. They're fine, right? Just don't live off of them, okay?
Yeah.
Like that's nonsense. Right? There's a line here, but they're not poison. The poison is in the dose, okay?
Right.
Anyway, so back on track. So those gatekeepers are no longer there in the same way. It's no, like people still will message, my editor at Men's Health and be like, hey, how do I get featured in here? I got a really great story. It's like they don't care about that. You have to come at that side of things through what is going to be of service to the editor, what is going to be of service to the audience, because there's more competition than ever
Hmm.
for eyeballs on things like T Nation and Men's Health. But the cool thing is you can now reverse it where there's this big push and everybody's growing brand on social media. I think that's wise and I've done it. But now I think because there are less people who are going for getting platformed and validated through AT Nation, through an elite FTS like you've written for, or these other big platforms, it ultimately allows you to stand out in the industry. And you alluded to the fact that I've written for a lot of these things. So let's do this. I started with T Nation 5 years ago. I got an invitation by Danny Sugar. She was a guest on my podcast, saw that I was already writing for my website, which is a very big thing.
That's one thing you hit on big time in that interview. Yep.
The interview goes really in depth, so I won't go back into depth, but get a website, start writing for it if you're interested in this. This is key because you have to practice and demonstrate the skills. Danny saw that I was already doing this. I was already a practiced writer. She liked my other media, so she invited me to come write for T Nation. That's a monstrous opportunity. And I leaned very
Mm.
heavily into it and I branded around it aggressively. And I still think it carries a lot of weight. And our pal Daniel DeBrock saw this and he asked me, reach out to me, hey, how do I do this? So I gave him the three things that I talk about in the YouTube. It's you got to learn the skill of writing, you got to practice it. You have to learn the style, the voice of the publication you want to write for, be of service to them, and you have to just go and figure out what their submission guidelines are.
Hmm.
Daniel did all that, got published on T Nation, got published on Elite FTS, got published on Kabuki Strength, went to work for them for a while. He's the example of doing it that way, and it gives him a lot of credibility.
For sure.
So what happened? Generation Iron came calling, wanted me to write for them. Generation Iron is a big media platform, and I've got a great
Huge.
relationship with them. Barband, I got connected through Barband. I wrote for them. I got connected through bodybuilding.com. Wrote for them. It was never officially published. They were sold. I was paid. So I don't wave bodybuilding around. It's a giant kick in the pants, but technically it was there. And along the way, I've written for Kabuki Strength. I've written for, but just a personal trainer development center. Been featured in Arnold Schwarzenegger's email newsletter, Arnold's Pump Club, which
That's
is a
cool.
very, very rare sort of honor. I've written for my friend Luca Hocevar's Vigor Ground Fitness website, and I'm probably missing a couple things in here somewhere. And I've got a new big one that's coming up in the not too distant future, which I will share once it's officially published because
Of
I
course. Yeah.
don't share it. What's that?
Don't count your chickens before they hatch.
I'm a big believer in that. So if you look at someone's career and you see that, whoa, this person is written for all of these things, that's now kind of a unique credibility that you used to only see for people like a Ben Bruno or a Tony Gentilcore, Eric Cressy, or
Right.
some of these sort of iconic figures within the strength and conditioning world, because they were the ones who were well known because they were writing on T Nation and for all these other things. They're ready for Live Strong or whatever was
Right.
kind of the big thing, the personal trainer development center again. So I think there can be a tremendous amount of credibility and authority you can build from writing for things like that. And I think the
Hmm.
path is there because the editors, they are looking for great content, but they're looking for stuff that is of service to them and valuable to their audience, not, hey, I'm very status seeking and transactional. I want to be featured because I think it's going to make me blow up. It doesn't work that way. How do I get featured on the cover of Strong magazine? Like, no, that's the wrong
Right.
approach to things, right?
Yeah. That's one thing that you actually mentioned at the beginning of our talk today, like being of service. And whether that's being of service to your clients, but more so it's being of service to the audience that you're trying to serve, that you're trying to reach, sorry. And you said understanding the audience that these publications are speaking to, what they want to learn. I think that's so, so important. in learning how to write in different tones, learning how to write to different audiences, writing on different topics. Uh, you also tend to stay in your lane from what I've read. I've read a number of your publications, and you speak on similar topics, not the same, but you always speak with a good depth of knowledge with validation for it. There's always citations. Um,
Hmm.
what like is that something that you just write on things that you find interesting, or do you choose specific topics based on the publication?
Mostly what I'm writing, it's the intersection of what I find interesting and what I think people will find valuable. I'll give you a really good example. It's one of the
Mhm.
pieces I'm most proud of, and I think you have read it. It's the piece I wrote for Kabuki Strength. So it's one of the longer and
Yep.
more technical pieces. There's a bunch of research citations in there, and it's on training with an injured limb,
Hmm.
right? If you've coached anybody, you're going to have a client who comes in, whether it's, okay, this is just pissed off today, or hey, I broke my wrist or I broke my ankle. And the alternative is they just don't do anything for 3 to 6 months or whatever time frame they're healing, in which case their metabolic health is going to decline, their mental health is going to decline, the habit is not being maintained. And those are three very important tenets I talk about in the article. However, when you get into this and you kind of coaches, we just sort of figure this shit out. We figure out ways to get around it and go, okay, cool. Well, you can't use this wrist. We're just going to have you like do seated cable row single arm on the right side. We might be able to figure out something with a strap so that way someone's able to do something where they don't have to grip something with that arm.
Hmm.
Or someone's got a busted ankle. Cool. We sit in the leg press. And you do single leg press, right? And you gain this experience. So I've dealt with a ton of this in 13 and a half years. So
Of course.
I had a lot of practical experience. And then I got into the research and realized, wait a second, there's actually a ton of really cool research here that if you train with the, if you train the healthy limb and you're not able to do anything with the injured limb, something cool happens. The nervous system is pretty much we don't fully understand the mechanism, but we think it's nervous system innervates the injured limb where it spares muscle thickness and muscle strength. Now, if
Hmm.
someone goes and rips a quad tendon clean off, you're not going to go and sit in a leg extension and prevent atrophy of that tissue. That's a fairly
Right.
catastrophic injury, but it is still beneficial. You're going to have a better outcome if you're still as early as you're able to get back to the gym. Because again, with a major lower body injury, just the act of getting in there is a bit of a consideration. But I get into all that. There's a resource and it talks about like the practicality of, okay, cool, sounds great to sit down and do dumbbell bench press with a broken leg. Well, can we actually get the dumbbells in place? So you have to kind of think about barbell bench press actually probably works fine in that situation. So there's literally the logistical aspects of this is also how you can tell when someone has actually coached people and dealt with it versus not.
Hmm.
So this article goes into great depth on all these things, and it has a program for both if someone has an injured arm or an injured leg. And I go through what, kind of how the research on it, present it in such a way that represents the research, but doesn't get so technical and nerdy that like people just tune out.
Right.
And I'm really proud of that piece. And I think the Kabuki Strength was the best place for it. I've been working on this for a while and I offered it to them and they loved it. So, and now I get to wave around that I've written for them. So there's a whole bunch of wins across the board. But from a practical standpoint, I also looked around and this resource didn't exist. Yes, the research is there and you get people referencing in different places, but no one had actually built this very detailed resource that explained to the younger coach or the enthusiast how this thing worked and a lot of ideas of actually practically how to set up your training and your training program, cardio considerations, you name it, didn't exist. So I built it.
Did you, when you started down this path of writing and practicing writing, refining your writing, did you seek out any sort of education in that regard or any mentorship, anything like that?
So I'm assuming this is mostly audio. I don't know if you'll air it on your
No, no,
video channel.
it'll be on YouTube for sure. Yeah.
It'll be on YouTube. So anybody watching is like, here's a bookshelf, but there's a whole bunch of books on writing. So if anybody's really interested, start with the book On Writing Well by William Zinsser. I love audiobooks, books on writing, you got to read them. So On Writing Well, another really good one is Everybody Writes by Anne Handley. Excellent book. A lot of more modern references to media. There's a lot of them here. I don't want to overwhelm you. Good. One of the most important things is just getting good at word selection, editing, cutting out like weak language. Right Type by William Broha, another really good book. And there's a couple more I'll give people. So there's obviously the technical writing, but there's also the habit of the art of just sitting down, getting past procrastination, just shipping the work. So Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art is great for that.
Love that book. Yeah.
Amazing book. Short book. You can read that so quickly. That one's fine on audio. And then Seth Godin's The Practice. I have a copy of it right here. I just happen to have these things nearby. I didn't prepare this. Oh,
I didn't
there we
prepare
go.
this.
No, I literally didn't. This is how my brain works. The
Love
Practice,
it.
Seth Godin. This is really good about just showing up, shipping the work, getting into the process and the habit of this stuff. The title, The Practice, Shipping Creative Work. It's literally what he talks about. Easy read. So one of the best ways to become a better writer is to read books on writing.
Totally
And I
agree.
think it would be great if you have someone in your world who knows a lot of writing. I didn't necessarily seek out writing mentors. I just tried to do a lot of it, learn as I went. These books are going to be a really good resource for this stuff. Um, I think there's so many skills in our industry that if you find the right person who has expertise and stuff, I think it's a really great idea to go seek those people out. You're going to get, my career is an interesting mishmash of brute force application of gaining experience, mass absorption of ideas and assimilating the things that were valuable and then going surgical and deeper where I find good things. It's not a very efficient path. So I think for a coach who's trying to fast track these sort of things, and there's some things you can't really fast track, but
Right.
you can be more efficient than I did, is go to the people and the resources that actually know this stuff. And sometimes you can hire a mentor in these specific things. But one of my favorite things is just to figure it all out as I go. There's some
Right.
things I'm just not very good at, like web development, not happening. So I hired a web developer.
Yeah. One of the things that's helped me the most is just doing a lot of speaking and doing a lot of writing. The more I get on podcasts, the more I make content for YouTube, the more I speak, the less I use filler words, the more succinctly I can create ideas, the more efficiently I can convey information without these like weak language, as you mentioned. And then I do a lot of writing. I write every single day. Not all of it sees the internet, but I write about a lot of stuff. And it makes me a better speaker, which in turn makes me a better communicator, which in turn helps me help the people I work with better. I think writing and reading are two things that you should do every single day, regardless if your goal is to be a writer or not.
And writing is an important skill for coaches. Everybody should be building an email list. At some point or other, if you're going to be writing emails, especially if you're marketing, then writing is an important skill. Now, the skill of copywriting for sales writing is a little bit
It's
different than
tough.
actually it's very different from the skill of like literary writing. If anybody's ever done any university level
Yeah,
English
that's
literature type
my
stuff, which I
background. Yeah.
yeah, I've got a little bit of that too. And that's very different. Now, I think there could be something valuable in going and reading some Hemingway or some Steinbeck or some of the old classics.
I'm a
Uh,
Dostoevsky kind of
I literally was
guy.
the word that was the next name on my tip of my tongue. So exactly right. But you don't want to turn around and try to replicate that writing exactly. We get into a lot of really elaborate, flamboyant, flowery language right to the end user. Most of the end,
Yeah.
it's not that you have to write to a third grade level, but listen, you're not writing to a graduate level either. You're going to go over the audience's head. It just becomes hard to penetrate if the writing is really thick and verbose and complicated and clumsy.
I think I was actually just thinking, imagine if Dostoevsky made fitness content.
Well, I mean, I also think too, like it's kind of like this is sort of off in left field, but you get these arguments like, oh, could Babe Ruth do well in like modern baseball, or like how would Wayne Gretzky do in like the NHL today? And it's like, yes, if you took Babe Ruth exactly with his skill set and ability into today's game, he probably wouldn't be very good. But that predisposes the thought that he wouldn't have access to the same strength and conditioning and
Exactly.
wouldn't have grown up with the skill development in the minors all the way through the game that it is today. So if he was quite literally head and shoulders above the skill level of all these other people, I mean, God, what is he? He was playing baseball against what, like garbage men and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Mailman.
firemen and truck drivers and what have you, some of them. So if given his level of talent in context imported into today's games like Gretzky, you give Gretzky everything that Connor McDavid had in terms of coming through all the way, and he have applied it, Gretzky would still rip the league apart.
Our cigarettes are better now too. So he would have been like right on pace.
I think you got what like you've got. I think Mike Bossy and Guy Lafleur. I swear those guys are probably smoking on the bench or at least in between periods. And then, I mean, some of the old Oilers, they were probably doing lines,
Oh,
right?
they're probably doing lines off the boards.
Well, let's just say we kind of know that those guys are a little bit wild. They were still winning cups, right? So that sort of stuff isn't going on in today's game. But you're also seeing this in terms of some of the players now, like what Sidney Crosby, 36 years of age, has one of the best seasons of his career. Ovechkin got going a little bit slowly, but ripped it up in the second half of the season and dragged the Capitals into the playoffs at the
Yeah.
end. Or Joe Pavelski at 40 years of age, absolutely just playing elite hockey. So it's the guys who really applied to strength and conditioning. I love guys like Zdeno Chara, who's just still ragdolling. He's retired now, but ragdolling people at 45. And
Yeah.
now I think he's running like multiple marathons within a week. Just crazy shit like this. And that dude is 6'9". He's just an absolute weapon.
So great,
Total
great
side quest.
tangent. Great
Yeah.
tangent. Um, Now you cut your teeth as a trainer. You still train clients in person.
Full
And
time.
this is something that I still train clients in person, and I totally understand that basically when I do it, I'm losing money. But
Hmm.
I gain so much more than income from those hours in the gym. I gain, again, relationship building, communication, coaching eye. These are all things that are immeasurably valuable. How have you found that your personal training coaching practice has fed into your writing, social media, et cetera?
It's a source of the majority of it. It's the source of the ideas. It's a source of the experience that has gone into most, if not all, of the training articles I've ever written. And it's the inspiration behind a lot of the pithy little pieces of wisdom that get turned into Twitter posts that I post on Instagram that I've built a massive following on. They work, right? And obviously there's a skill of writing and making them really resonant. But at the end of the day, sometimes they're literal quotes from what clients are saying. And the idea is you're still plugged into the everyday person's experience instead of people who fairly obviously are making stuff up based off of not having a really practical understanding of what the real client's experience is. And I think I just recorded something for an event for Coach Catalyst. They do a
Mhm.
virtual event. And we talked about this, where I think that it is a mistake for new trainers to now not embrace learning the skill of online training. You and I come from a generation that a lot of people think, well, you need to have trained on the floor for X many years before you can do online. In a perfect world, theoretically, yes, that experience is incredibly valuable and it will make you a much better online coach. I do not think that going straight into online without any in-person experience is wise or going to
I
set
would
you up for
agree. Yeah.
success. However, we now need to understand the world has changed. I mean,
Mhm.
what do we have the right to tell the coach who is 6 months into his career, her career, in March of 2020 and saying, I'm sorry, but you haven't earned the right to train your clients online. Despite the fact you've been locked out of a gym, those clients still want a relationship and support. And maybe it's the difference between you giving them some body weight stuff and regular interaction that keeps them going versus them just quitting completely. So guess what? Because of that experience, we have two choices. Help teach these people how to do it with integrity, so that way they're able to add to their livelihood and have a little bit more of a resilient and more robust career while being of service to the clients and giving them a really killer experience online, or just say no, you can't do it. So I'm of the now we're going to see coaches, newer, younger coaches, or we're going to learn this skill fairly concurrently early in their career. So I'm very pro that.
Me
I
too.
also I also think it is long been a bit of a lie for most trainers to think that, oh, you're going to be able to go online. It's going to be easy. You're going to have clients coming out of your ass, because that happens in person for everybody, right? Last
Mhm.
time I checked. And I'm
Yeah,
one of the busiest trainers in probably since I stepped foot in the industry, certainly one of the busiest in my city and probably in the country, just because of the sheer volume of clients I've trained consistently for a long time. And even I've had days where like, oh, I wonder where the next client's going to come from, right? You always worry about that.
of course.
But to me, I think that the promise of life on the beach and everything is easy and I can work from my laptop for like 4 hours a day or 4 hours a week or whatever, it's just a bunch of rubbish. There will always be a few people who just kind of hack the system and figure it out and they know how to scale it. And whether or not that service offering is all that great, they are financially successful. I think the reality for most coaches, I think a lot of people made a push before the pandemic happened. They made a big push in online, gave up in person, wanted the freedom, and they realized pretty quickly, wait a second, this is actually really hard. I don't get to do it this way, not be of like, high touch point of service to your clientele. And then they're struggling, and all of a sudden, like, I need to go back to in person. The way I look at it is in person has always been my bread and butter. It has given me a very rewarding livelihood. I do very well on this stuff. Sure, there's plenty of hours to it, but I like it. I enjoy
Yeah.
it. I get to spend time with my clients, like my client Larry, 73 3 years old, strong
He's a
as hell.
legend.
He's a legend. He's fun to be around. In fact, I get to train him this afternoon. He's going to be great. And I recently started a lady. She's 75, had a knee replacement, and she's got a great attitude. She's really enthusiastic about it. We're just easing her into some stuff. She's gung ho. I don't want to not do that.
Yeah.
And yes, in theory, it sounds great to, work. Listen, I can't shut it off. I'm one of those people. If you told me to work less hours, I'd be like, that doesn't make me happy. Why would I want to do
Yeah.
like more of shit that I don't enjoy and less of what I do enjoy, which is a lot of the work, because of somebody else's arbitrary idea of what work-life balance is supposed to be? Guess what? Work-life balance doesn't really exist in our career. So for me, in person is actually a very robust and stable income. And that has led me to have the ability to kind of do what I wanted when I want. If I want to hop on a plane somewhere or grab like, near front row seats at a concert for a Tool concert, or whatever, I'm like, I can do that without even thinking about it. I have the funds to solve problems if, significant problems arise without going, oh my God, like, I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage next month. So it's that foundation. And I think a lot of coaches take that for granted and don't foster it or don't treat it as their foundation. You look at my pal Luca Hosfar is a great example.
Hmm.
Look at, I don't even know how he managed to do all the things he does. He's got some
He's
great,
a bit of a renaissance man. Yeah, for sure.
he's wild. But fundamentally, he owns a gym. It's a very reputable gym. They have an incredible service offering there. He's got a team of coaches, but Lucas still coaches something
Yep.
in the 20 to 25 hour a week range because he loves it. It's what inspires. He's very good at like filming and capturing pieces that he can share through his media. But it's one of the ways that he stays in touch with what his true passion is. And I've seen people that I think have lost their love for this and lost a lot of interpersonal connection because they left the in-person space and existed solely online. And I promise you, it is different being on the keyboard all day versus being face-to-face with people. Now, with online coaching, I'm a big believer in voice messages, video messages, keep the interpersonal side of it. That's how
Yep.
you're going to thrive. You're not going to be this coach who's like, okay, hey, here's the rules. You send me one email a week. Everything's got to be point form. You check in on Sunday.
Not
Otherwise,
coaching.
you can't even get a hold. And I know people who do this well, but they've branded into a space where they're serving a very specific audience that wants a low friction, which is important to understand, experience, who this is a kind of structure that they want. And you can actually price that higher, but you really have to earn that and put yourself in a position where you're still doing it in a way that you're giving that service to an audience that values that specific experience. Most coaches and most clientele are not looking for that.
Yeah. I I personally don't view that as coaching. I see the coaching relationship as one that is immersive for
Mm.
client and coach. It's what I love about what we do is the actual impact that you can have on the individual. And I love the way you said, the in-person training allows you the stability to do the things that you want. I view my online work the same way. I love working online with my clients. I love doing what I'm doing. It's one of the reasons I'll never give it up. The business mentorship stuff that I do, it's much more lucrative, but I would not be as good of a business mentor and business coach without actually actively coaching clients. I will never give that up. I think, and I think you will resonate with this a lot and agree with me. A major KPI for me and my business is when I open my schedule for the day and I look at it, there is nothing on it where I go, ugh,
And let's take this down to something really important for the coach. I'm assuming your audience is a lot of coaches.
mostly
So
coaches. Yeah.
Moses, okay, good. You never want to be in a position where you resent. There's two aspects to this. One is you never want to resent the client. Okay. And there's
Mm,
two ways you resent the client. One is you're not charging enough for your time and what you're putting into it. And that's a clue. Or two, the client is a terrible fit for you and you just don't like working with that client. We've all had clients that were emotionally taxing that we dreaded. I've had verbally abusive clients before. It's hyper rare.
Hmm.
But I can think of 13 and a half years. I can think of three examples of things where a client ended up becoming verbally abusive. One, just every person and other coaches that this individual seemed to brush up against, people seem to avoid. I think there was just an antisocial personality there, right? It's unethical to say that clinically, but I think this was an antisocial person.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is someone who I like literally had to block on social media and just nope, bad news. A second individual was very short-lived client, was very caught up in a multi-level marketing thing that was really rooted in pseudoscience and was really trying to push that, didn't respect my boundaries around it. And then, when I would ask questions, she would she's very defensive about it. So she, had some outbursts about it. But then she would get mad if I wasn't asking questions because I didn't seem interested in it. So it's like, you can't win. So after 5 sessions, I politely allowed her to decide not to continue because I was going to be like, this isn't a good fit either way.
Right.
And then I've had a situation where a client who I worked with for a fair bit of time, just there's some stuff not respecting my cancellation policy, my time boundaries, et cetera, not communicating very well. And then I believe, because there's two incidents here, I think there was some text communication. I believe he'd been drinking and he got very abusive and like really, really bad that evening. Profusely apologized the next day, but it had violated my boundaries to the point where I'm like,
100%.
no, I'm not willing to continue this relationship. And I believe there's a good person there, but unfortunately, it crossed the line for me. And you have to actually get really clear on what those boundaries are, but also like what's a good fit for you and what isn't a good fit. These are extreme cases, right? But and male coaches don't tend to deal with as much as female coaches on average get more of it because unfortunately sometimes you end up with inappropriate comments and behavior from some of your male clients. Most of the female coaches that I know have had some experience like this. It's just really unfortunate. And it can be really scary if you are feeling kind of desperate and feel like you need the client, regardless of whether they're abusive or just
Yep.
a terrible fit. They're canceling all the time. They don't want to be charged for it. You find that you're chasing them around, literally or metaphorically, and it's stressful and it's dominating your thinking. And what happens is you don't realize it, but it's affecting your mental energy around your other clients. And they're going to pick up on this, whether they're saying it or not. So I've noticed that the best thing I ever did was this is years ago, but I had a cluster of clients that were all really, really problematic when it came to reliability scheduling. There's some major issues there. And I think combined, there was like, I don't know if it was 15, 16 sessions a week and I allowed two of them just to go. Just one owed me like a little bit because he's half a month behind on paying me. I'm just like, no, just done. Like,
Yep.
and
Just done.
then it allowed me the bandwidth to kind of straighten a couple of the other ones out who'd been a little hit or miss, but were generally good clients. But I was less beholden. And I just on trust, on faith, cut this. And within the space of a month, just because I think of the energy putting out in the world and like years of track record of just word of mouth, 8 new people just washed up on my shore somehow.
Yeah.
And some of those fit in great. There was a couple that were good fits. So they again, you get comfortable with just, letting those people move on. You got to do it ethically. You do it professionally and just say, hey, this is not a good fit, or you just don't fight to renew them. And over time, if you keep applying this, it's what God, the books, The Secret, or what is the other one? And these fluffy, silly books about the law of attraction, basically.
Hmm.
And as much as it's this fluffy either or thing, you can't stand in front of a mirror and go, hey, like, here's what I want, good energy into the universe. No, but it's your it's the energy you show up and interact with people every day if you're in a good place. And people sense that. And then those people want to support you more. They want to be around you more. And your attitude is not one of entitlement, but an attitude of being of service. And you apply that, magnify that over, I love this concept, a surface area of luck. You take this and you scale it across years of interaction with
Hmm.
other people where you are of service, you're giving, you're not transactional. You try to help and support other people instead of gatekeep things, whether it's other coaches, etc. Um, and you're not always just trying to, out of every single interaction you have with people, you're trying to squeeze the most out of it, right? You're trying to negotiate the most for you, and you've got to win, and the other person has to lose in order for you to win. Like, fuck that shit. But if you scale this across all of your interactions with everybody,
Yeah.
and you are what we talked about earlier, developing skills, When opportunities are presented, you lean hard into skills. When I was offered a chance to be on T Nation, cool. I was working really hard to make sure the first and every other article was great. When I was first asked to come speak at my friend's conference after attending it for a few years in a row and
Yeah.
attending a ton of things, I dove into like books on public speaking, and got someone in my world to show me how to put together good PowerPoint slides. And I worked really hard at it, and it went well, et cetera, et cetera. When you're given those opportunities, sometimes you have to say yes to things that scare you, but then you fucking do everything you can to make sure you're really good at them. So you perked up when I said surface area of luck, and I heard Hormozy
Do you
talk
say
about
luck or love?
luck, surface area
Luck.
of luck, right? I mean, surface area of love, that sounds really corny, and that could go a lot of different
I don't
places.
know, man. I think it's
But
good. Like you approached
we're,
life with love.
you
I like it.
you can, well, Seth Godin, a lot of times he talks about like um giving your art, right? Like your emotional labor and art, like your art in everything you do and every way you interact with people. So it kind of aligns with that. But surface area of luck.
Okay.
People talk about luck. Guess what? There's a lot of luck that is involved in any of the successful
Yeah.
examples across our industry that we know. Like luck, being in the right place, right time. But surface area of luck is a reframe to say like you still have to be the one who chooses to show up, to put yourself in those rooms, sit at those tables, whether it's literally or metaphorically. Some of, you know, I Don Saladino is a good friend, and Don likes to tell this story, so I'll retell it. I met him in 2021 at Luca Hosvar's conference. I went in 2017, changed my career. I went back in 2021. Despite the pandemic bullshit and traveling from Canada was a nightmare, I went. And I did the VIP option, and Don was one of the speakers. I wasn't overly familiar with Don, but loved his presentation. And I sat down at one of the tables there. And so Don is walking through, and I said, "Hey, Don, sit with us." And so Don and I struck up a conversation, got to know each other really well. Asked him to come on my podcast later on, but just Don took a liking to me, and vice versa. And he's doing incredible stuff. Don trains
Oh, yeah.
Ryan Reynolds. He used to own a very successful gym in Manhattan. Now he's got a seven-figure online business. Like Hollywood celebrities are asking him to train them, and he's turning them down. Like Don is doing very well.
Hmm.
But along the way, like I just wanted to support Don, do cool shit for him. And then Don, one day after a podcast interview, he's like, "Man, how can I help you? What can I do for you?" I'm like, "Don, like, it's not about that for me. I just like helping other people." He's like, "No, man." He's like fighting with me. I'm like, "Okay, one of my goals, one of my aspirations is to one day write for Men's Health." He's like, "Done," because he's got a good relation. He sends an email in front of me to his pals who are the editors there, arranges it, and I did get the opportunity to write for Men's Health, which is now a brand flag that's all over my media, right? That's a
Hmm.
cool. And when I turned around and did my conference again last year, Don was interested in coming to speak. So I flew him up here. He spoke, and he gets off the plane and he smiles. He's a big, gregarious personality. He's like, "Andrew, only for you am I coming up here," right? Because it wasn't a
Edmonton.
direct flight for him, right, to Edmonton. So, great guy. And he was going to get Dr. Gabrielle Lyon involved, and she was part of the lineup, but then she had to withdraw because her book was coming out that week. So, surface area of luck, just get in rooms, support other people. People will smell taker, transactional
Oh
behavior up.
yeah.
You don't want to be involved with you. But if you're just the person that like, the fuck is wrong with this guy? Like he's literally just giving without, something in it for him. And people like that. And then they want to turn around, they want to do cool things for you. And I mean, yes, in a way, like you can be smart and realize that you're going to get a lot out of it. I found that for everything I've been able to give to the industry, I swear I've gotten tenfold back. And you start to trust that, and it just makes it easier just to show up. And even if once in a while someone kind of abuses it and takes from you, okay, don't let that
There's
ever like jade you, because there are just so many more great people. You just learn from that. You have a boundary around the individual who does that. You don't put any more time into that, and then you redirect your time and focus elsewhere. So I'm a big believer in the concept of surface area of luck, circus of luck, yeah, surface area of luck, because the flip side is feeling entitled to things and being unwilling to do anything because you
hmm.
feel entitled, and then you're not putting yourself out there and you expecting everything to come and find you. It won't. These opportunities won't. So you have to put yourself in those rooms.
Dude, I love that. I wrote it down a few times because it's something I believe in wholeheartedly. It's a great way to come full circle because one of the things you said at the beginning is like just fucking show up. Show up as yourself. Show up as the best version of yourself. Approach things from an attitude of service and things will come back to you. That abundance mindset is something I respect very highly in people. It's something you've, further iterated here as like just try to do great things and great things will always come back to you. So I want to be mindful of your time, and I do also want to be mindful of the fact that I love asking stupid questions at the end of my podcast. So
Okay,
we're gonna tie off the serious part of that because I think that was a fantastic way to tie a bow on our conversation. Do you like to crack an egg on the flat surface or the corner of the pan?
flat surface, because when you do it in the corner of the pan, it leaks out onto the stove and it can make a mess because I'm not necessarily that good at it. So always within the pan. And you know what I do? The, scramble 4 eggs every morning. The first three get cracked against each other. The fourth ends up cracked in the pan.
Dude, I had never heard anyone say that until my buddy Charlie came on the podcast. He's like, "Yeah, I crack my eggs together." I was like, "Meathead." All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try it. Next time I make eggs, I'm gonna try it.
Okay.
Um, do you make your bed in the morning?
No. So this whole like make your bed, I mean, I understand like there's this famous like what general or uh whatever who does a speech about it. And it's a metaphor for like feeling like you've accomplished something in the day. But I also think the counterpoint to this is you're spending time on some sort of arbitrary and ultimately meaningless thing. So you know what? Get up. Like morning rituals to me are kind of bullshit because you
Do
get this
something productive. Don't make your fucking
you,
bed.
you do something that's actually productive. And the more time you spend, I mean, if it's a ritual that helps you with your mindset, no problem. It's good. But if you're just doing arbitrary shit, like listen, my argument is like I'm only gonna fucking mess it up again later that day, right? My cat's gonna go up and sleep on there. I adjust the blanket so that way he's got a spot that he likes to sleep on during the day. That's really the only thing I care about. You can do all these like I mean if you're into meditation no problem at all like it's not my thing. I think it's actually awesome for people or like cold plunge like that's I'm sorry like if you like it great but that's dumb fuckery. I'm not even remotely interested in that kind of discomfort
I love
and
this conversation so much.
all these other things that people will do. It's like oh I gotta get my chi just right. Fuck it no like you know what I do. I go and I sit down, I make breakfast, make coffee, whatever. I sit down, I eat this stuff, and then like
I
people say,
start
"Oh, don't go on
work.
your phone right away." Listen, I start going through the messages. If clients message me, I get in this shit. You don't throw up a post for social media that day. Grab a shower, then I hit the road, go in and start training clients. And that's what I do. And guess what? If I spend 5, 8 minutes fucking around with my bed, then that's time that I either have to get up earlier or it cuts into time for me making breakfast. I don't rush in the mornings. I like to sit down, enjoy my coffee, and not be rushed when I'm like having breakfast. That's my thing.
Mhm.
So maybe that's not someone else's idea of like time well spent. I don't know. So tweet your own.
Dude, I made an entire YouTube video about how stupid it is. I think it's the dumbest, and you hit every nail on the head. Andrew, thank you so very much for joining me today, having this conversation. I'm going to have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes.
Thank
Um,
you.
any parting words of wisdom?
Nah, we've done enough. I appreciate
We've
it.
done
Okay,
enough.
I got one for you guys. All right.
Sure.
So everybody listening, if you've been listening to Paul for a while, okay, you like what he's doing. Okay, you like his style, his personality, that blunt, almost irascible sort of personality at times that's mixed with a lot of charm, right? Strong as a fucking ox. So listen, he does this stuff. You know, he's not making money off the podcast. He does great anyway, but you know what? Help him grow his YouTube. Help him grow his podcast. Take this, share it with someone else in your world. There's some coach out there who you're like, oh man, this podcast, or you might think I'm an idiot. I don't care. Share another episode. But if you like what I'm saying, share this with some coach who needs this smack up in the face of all the stuff we talk about, or who would just benefit from this. Maybe this coach is struggling a little bit, or maybe they're like on track. They're like, listen, you would love this. This is going to help you even more. Take this, share it. It will take you no time whatsoever. Think of the one fucking person in your world that you're like, you would love this. Take the link, send it to them, send them a quick voice message and be like, hey, I thought of you. They're going to love that, by the way. I thought of you. Give this a listen. This is really cool. And find unique ways to show up and support Paul. Get him in front of other people, please.
Well, I appreciate it. He said it for me. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.